Good evening. Welcome to today's event. Today we have a different subject, and we have some eminent people joining us to talk about a subject which we are not very exposed to. It is writing, and writing for plays. We have an eminent playwright with us, Mahesh ji. He is a renowned Indian playwright and screenplay writer in Marathi, credited with over 20 plays. Alongside Vijay Tendulkar, he is recognized as a pivotal figure in progressive Marathi and Indian theatre. His journey into theatre began in Nagpur, where he completed his MA in English. His passion for playwriting ignited after watching a play by Vijaya Mehta during his college years. His career includes teaching English literature and serving as a guest professor at the Film and Television Institute of India, Pune, and the National School of Drama, New Delhi. His diverse body of work spans realism, symbolism, and absurd theatre, tackling themes from creativity and life to sterility and death. Notable plays include Sultan, Holi, Party, and Vada Chirabandi. His plays have been translated into multiple languages and adapted into films such as Holi and Party. He has received numerous accolades, including the Sangeet Natak Academy Award in 1989, the Sangeet Natak Academy Fellowship in 2014, and his essay collection Mon Rag is also highly regarded. Please give a round of applause for our guest of the day, Shri Mahesh Elkunchwar. Please, sir. In conversation with him will be Dr. Akhila Ramnarayan, who is a literary scholar, a theatre actor, and an indie musician. She has a PhD in English from the Ohio State University and is currently a professor of literature at Sai University, Chennai. She has previously taught in India at Kriya University and the Asian College of Journalism, and in the US at the University of Dayton. Since 2007, Akhila has performed and toured nationally and internationally with Just Us Repertory, a Chennai based theatre group founded by playwright director Dr. Gauri Ramnarayan, who is also here. Also, her mother and first Carnatic vocal teacher. Akhila writes and records original songs with multi instrumentalist Doug Caraway, with whom she formed the indie rock duo Starcracker in 2024 and recently launched a podcast on creative process. She is currently working on a book of essays at the intersection of her scholarly interests and performing arts. Please welcome Dr. Akhila Ramnarayan. Our third guest today is Sri Sarabjit Garcha. He is a poet, an editor, a translator, and a publisher. His 5 books of poems include A Clock in the Far Past and Lullaby of the Ever Returning, in addition to a volume each of poems translated from Marathi and prose from Hindi. He has translated several American poets into Hindi, including W.S. Merwin and John Haynes, and several Indian poets into English, among them Manglesh Darbral and Leeladhar Jaguri. His poems, translations, and essays have been published in the Notre Dame Review, Versopolis. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce the rest of them. Modern Poetry in Translation, Asymptote, Two Lines Journal, the Indian Quarterly, Scroll, and The Wire, among other journals, and several anthologies. He has received the Fellowship for Outstanding Artists from the Government of India, the International Publishing Fellowship from the British Council, and the inaugural Godio Podio Probandho Award. His poems have been translated into German, Spanish, Russian, Malayalam, Kannada, Marathi, Punjabi, and Hindi. He is the founder and editorial director of Coppercoin, a multilingual publishing company based in Delhi, NCR. Please put your hands together for Sarabjit Garcha. He would be reading out from a book written by Sri Maheshji. So without further ado, I hand it over to Akhila for carrying on the proceedings.
Thank you. I invite you, Sarabjit, to read from Mahesh's book.
Thank you, Akhila. Before I read from this I'll just like to say a few words about the history of Mahesh Elkunchwar's essays. Even I did not know that he wrote so beautiful essays because I always knew him as a wonderful playwright. I had read his Vada Chirebandi in original Marathi, besides other plays, because I can read Marathi. I've been born and brought up in Maharashtra. But when I came across his book, Tribandh, I was astonished at the beauty of the essays because it was certainly out of the blue and beyond my expectations, the kind of essays he wrote, and especially the language that he used. It was very, very poetic. And that moved me, and I felt, okay, these essays need to be translated into English. So I approached him. In fact, I made a journey from Delhi to Nagpur and met him in person and asked permission to translate the essays, and he readily agreed. Of course, he did not know me by then, but we made acquaintance that way. And I made a harrowing journey back to my hometown in Nasik because I could not get a railway ticket. So I cannot forget that journey forever. It was the longest bus journey in my life, 14 hours. And yeah, but I'm really glad I made that journey and I read the book again to find a vantage point from which to uh, approach the essays. He uses simple language, but the language is very imagistic and at the same time very poetic. And he has a beautiful philosophy to share, but he does not wear it on his sleeves. So it is a latent philosophy which is spread throughout the book, and you get it. And you, of course, there are many heartbreaking moments in the book, but at the same time, you are left feeling redeemed when you have read the essays. And the roads that he takes to that redemption are always very different. So these three essays are approached in a very different manner. They are connected by a simple thread, which weaves memory as well as contemporary criticism, because he uses and quotes writers as diverse as Milton, Keats. But his all time favorite is Emily Dickinson. And that also came as a surprise because, at least, I have not met a playwright who's so deeply invested in poetry. I think for me, he's the first one. And yeah, of course, so that is how I was attracted to the essays. And I read the book again. Before attempting to translate it, I read it at least 3 times. And yeah, when the translation was completed, I showed it to him, and it was done in different drafts. And after it was finished, we sat together for 3 days and worked on the final script again. So that is how the book came into being. This is the journey of the book. Uh, in fact, I feel very grateful for this opportunity to be acquainted with this beautiful kind of Marathi, which is only specific to Mr. Elkunchwar. I'll read an excerpt from the book. So this is from the essay titled Necropolis. It's the first essay in the book. In Marathi, the order was changed by the publisher. It started with his childhood. The essays have a lot of element of autobiography, but I'll not call it autofiction because it goes beyond that. So in fact, I find them very genre defying. I'll read an excerpt. Midnight had risen like a fever and grown incredibly dense and dark. The sleeping corpses in the grave had now begun to breathe heavily, and the sound of their rising could be heard clearly. I'll start again with your permission. Midnight had risen like a fever and grown incredibly dense and dark. The sleeping corpses in the grave had now begun to breathe heavily, and the sound of their rising could be heard clearly. The sound was gradually building into a rumbling storm. Just as I felt I was about to be swept away by that storm, a voice, cutting through its density like a sharp weapon, made itself heard. I stood rooted to the spot. Which world was this voice coming from? It was definitely a woman's voice. That was for sure. But what kind of voice was that? Was it crying or singing? Was it in tune or out of tune? I couldn't understand. When the voice definitely started to approach and get closer to me, I stood up cautiously. I had never heard such a voice before and never even imagined a song like that. The song had no words, just a melody. Or was it out of tune? Slowly, I saw a woman coming towards me, making her way through the graves. And even as she walked, she didn't stop singing. The woman came over and stopped an arm's length away from me. She started when she saw me. She was naked, her body lustrous like a kevda flower. Stardust had spilled on her skin, glittering here and there. Her eyes were wide and expressionless, and her mouth wet and scarlet, as if she had just drunk blood, a drop or two falling infrequently onto her breasts. Two red lotuses had tumescently sprouted over those blood-soaked breasts. Kevda pollen stuck to the long fingers of her graceful, gorgeous hands. Two cobras had coiled themselves around her long, slim thighs, and a radiant ruby sparkled over her vulva like a nagmani. As soon as she came closer to me, she stopped singing. We both gazed at each other for a long time. I stood as if caught in an invisible, bewitched trap. I just couldn't move. My mind was filled with curiosity, fear, and hatred all at once. But I realized that an irresistible attraction, stronger than all that, was slowly beginning to take over my mind. Was it the power of her wondrous beauty or the intoxicating and forbidden fragrance of her body? That scent was ancient, as if it had been ingrained for centuries and it had the appeal of antiquity. I thought you'd be scared, said the woman at last. Even though my mind stopped me, I inhaled the scent of her deeply and said, "Where's the need to be scared?" That made her break into a sudden laugh, and moonlight spilled from her mouth. Everybody from where you come is scared of me, scared and angry. Angry because they are scared. She spoke as if she were plainly sharing the facts. I couldn't control myself. And as if someone within were forcing me, I said, "You are breathtakingly beautiful." Is that so? It's the first time I've heard anything like that about me. Your song too is a class apart, world class and wonderful. But why did you stop singing? When she began to sing again, the vines rising out of the tombs bent unwittingly towards her. What a song! How can a person with such expressionless eyes sing like a fountain spouting blood? She paused within minutes and said, "Don't tell anyone, otherwise they'll drive you out of the village, just like they drove me out." They drove you out of the village? She covered her face with her bare fingers. I felt an irresistible urge to pull her hands aside and lick the pollen stuck to her fingers with the tip of my tongue. So much so that the cobras on her thighs began to wriggle uneasily. As if having seen through me, she said, "Don't do that. The pollen on my fingers is poisonous. If you as much as touch it, you'll turn black and blue." Then, after a brief pause, she said, "How did you even get here? And what are you doing here?" I smiled and jokingly said, "I'm looking for an empty, open grave." One certainly gets it when the time comes. Why hurry? I am not lucky enough to have even that. When she saw that I was perplexed, she said, "Hey, I'm alive. I'm as alive as you are, maybe more alive, and alive forever." What do you mean by alive forever? It means I will never die. Then what are you doing here? I asked. What would I do? You people expelled me, exiled me. You are many. I am alone. You will die, and then all of you will be able to meet in your graves, rest in your graves, dreaming beautiful dreams that will never cease. I am not that lucky. Forever alive, I will wander from among these graves. Don't you feel afraid over here? What's there to be afraid of? Instead, it's quiet here. The cities and towns around are bustling. This graveyard in their midst, it's like the eye of the storm. I was jolted. Leaning forward, I asked her, "You have neither a house nor a grave. How do you live? What do you eat?" If at all I am unable to stay hungry, I go to a village and stand on the outskirts in hope. That too, only once in a long while. But as soon as women see me, they pick up their children, cover them with the pallu, and hurriedly shut the doors. The men take the hookah hose out of their mouths, spit in disgust, and shoving their hands into the underwear, begin to fondle the penis. Sometimes someone comes by and, taking pity, leaves a morsel or two, and making sure that nobody's around, leaves in a hurry. If I don't find anything, I come here and eat the red cherries from these vines. There are plenty of those here, and they contain the sweetness of unending dreams. That's what slakes my hunger and quenches my thirst. In a way, I'm happy. She laughed and again let a torrent of moonlight out of her mouth. When I couldn't help it, I finally asked, "Who are you? What's your name? Why were you expelled from your village?" "I don't know who I am." "Do we ever know that? Is the people who tell you, you are this, you are that?" "Well, they told me that I am an unwanted note. Some people even said that I am not only an unwanted note but also a forbidden one. They said I am Madhyam in Rag Bhoop and Nishad in Rag Darbari. That's against the rules, against nature. Moreover, they said that if I stay among them, I will desecrate their divine, pure music and destroy it. Before I could say something, they pelted stones at me and ousted me from the village. Then I came here straight away. There's a beautiful silence here, and I have created some unique ragas using all the taboo notes, which I can sing here freely." Saying so, she began to render an alap in a slow, steady rhythm. As the alap deepened, a thin line of light rose over the horizon in the distance. Then, as the song progressed, the entire horizon began to brighten, the light soaring upwards into space in ecstasy. As I watched mesmerized, she stopped singing and said, "Do you see how the fires of curiosity have lit up like lust in village upon village? But they will not accept it. Their curiosity does not have the backbone of courage, and because of the lack, they will never be able to sing a single unique raga, let alone ragas. They will keep grinding the same stale ragas and call it pure classical music. Be it so. I'm leaving, but remember one thing. Whether I have a home, village, grave or not, I can sing whatever I want in the cemetery. If it has to be in the cemetery, so be it. Who gets this much freedom?" When she turned to leave, I saw something move in her hair which was brushing the ground. Holding my breath, I said, Medusa! No, I am not Medusa. When her gaze falls on humans, they turn into heavy stone. I don't want that to happen to anyone because of me. I don't want anyone to be destroyed. I want everyone to be happy. That's why I did away with my vision that turned outwards. I want to punish those who exiled me by treating them well. She turned, and as she started walking towards the horizon, making her way out of the graves, the light that had risen there began to fade away and eventually disappeared. It was pitch dark now. The moon was past its peak. The breaths around her had stopped and returned to the grave, and the cemetery was once again still and deeply silent. I was suddenly exhausted, too weak. My legs felt like they were going to give out. Would I now have to move out of this midnight, this tense darkness, this silence? Would I be able to find my way back? Did I even want to? It felt so serene and safe here, as if I were in my mother's womb. Should I go back to the hustle and bustle of life, relationships, joys, and sorrows? But going back to my mother's womb would be like making a new birth certain. Then, as the weaving of ties picks up, so will the weaving of sorrow and anxiety. When will I attain the state of Jai Manache Ankur Upje, that is, the mind ceasing to sprout? It didn't appear that I would attain it even after death. The rustling creepers around made that clear to me. What if death also sprouts? Does that mean that death too is not the final state? Two worlds seems to be my destiny, not just mine, but each living thing's. We must get out of this cycle. It seems that this cycle of birth and death is created from the sprouts in the mind. Are there such things as birth and death? Or do they constantly occur only in the mind? What a frenzy! The mind must be uprooted. It is its nature to keep whirling in a circle with uncontrollable blind energy. Like a cyclone, it swirls madly and tears us apart. This cyclone must have an internal eye, an epicenter where sovereign, vigilant, unshakable silence prevails. I must go there and sit forever in Padmasan in that very silence. That's it. I loved the idea, but when I tried to raise my legs to sit in the lotus posture, they did not move. When I bent down to see what had happened, I saw that those green creepers had wrapped my feet in a tight grip and were slowly but surely creeping upwards. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you so much.
Mahesh, we'll get back to your plays in a minute. No, we'll get to the essays in a minute, but I think we can start maybe to talk about your writing for theatre, your plays. I thought we could talk a little bit about your plays for those in the audience who may not be as familiar with them. You can hear me now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Chandramouli already mentioned several of your plays.
Akhila, leave it aside. I don't understand a word of what you're saying because there is a lot of echo here.
That's fine. Shall I do this?
Yes,
okay,
yes. This is better for me.
Okay. So, Mr. Chandramouli already mentioned several of your plays. He talked about Sultan, Holi, Raktapushp, Party, Vada Chirebandi, Pratibimb, Atmakatha. All of these are now classics that all of us have read as college students in our classes. And you've worked with doyens of theatre such as Vijay Mehta, Satyadev Dubey, Amol Palekar. They've brought your plays to life. And 3 of your plays were made into films. Holi by Ketan Mehta in 1984, which starred a very young Amir Khan, Ashutosh Gawadekar, and also starred Nasiruddin Shah and Om Puri. And then Party was also made in 1984. Govind Nihalani directed it. And it had a star-studded ensemble cast. I believe Rohini Hattangadi won an award for that as a supporting actor. Several others in it, including Vijay Mehta, again Om Puri, Nasiruddin Shah, Amrish Puri, Ila Arun, so many of the names of film from yesteryear. And Sonata was made in 2017. It's in English. Some of you might have seen it. It has Aparna Sen, Lilith Dubey, and Shabana Azmi. And as an aside, I also discovered that you acted as a social worker in Akrosh.
Yes.
Which was, the screenplay was by Vijay Tendulkar.
Oh my God, you are aware of my indiscretion.
Yeah. So anyway, I wanted to ask you how you went. Mr. Chandramouli mentioned that you strayed into a play because you couldn't get into a film hall for some movie. And how did you go from watching your first play to writing them yourself?
I think I stumbled into playwriting. In fact, I started writing very late, when I was about 28. That is when I started writing. Before that, it had never occurred to me that I would ever be a writer, because I had planned my life beautifully. I had decided to do nothing with my life. I had a good job. I was getting good enough money. I was reading a lot, traveling a lot, and that was a great life. Who wanted to get into it? But I used to see Hindi movies occasionally, and once we went there, I and my friend, and couldn't get a seat. So on our way back, my friend said, let us go and see this new play, somebody called Tendulkar, it's a new play. I had heard of Tendulkar, but I hadn't read him. So I said, no way, I am not interested in theatre, because I had seen only 2 plays till that time. I was 27, I was living in Nagpur. I had seen 2 musicals. One was Saubhadra and another was Man Apman. And in Saubhadra, Rukmini was about 65 something. And Arjun was something like 70 with paunch. And they belted songs throughout. And I said, thank you very much. But then he insisted, and we went in, and it was produced and directed by Vijaya Mehta and Dr. Lagu, Vijaya Mehta, and Datta Bhatt, a very major actor from Maharashtra. They had acted in it. And within 10 minutes, I realized that, my God, this is absolutely something new, utterly exceptional. And I was completely electrified. I said, it's an amazing thing. What am I watching? I was under the spell for 24 hours. So the next day, I revisited and saw the play again, but rather, I was on my guard. Because the first day I didn't realize, 1 minute Dr. Lagu and Vijay are here, and within a matter of seconds, when did they come here, It was like that. I mean, it was magic. Next day I said, no, I have to find out what the grammar has gone into it. And then I came home, and I always had this savage confidence, although I hadn't written a single word. I thought, well, I think I can do this, So I wrote a long one act called Sultan. And a friend of mine sent it to Satyakatha, which is a prestigious magazine, and they published it immediately. And not only that, they wrote me requesting me to write a few more. So I wrote them, They came naturally to me. Within an year or so, Vijaya was in England at that time. So my publisher sent the bunch of 5 one acts I wrote to Vijaya Bai. I said, okay, this is a new voice, a young voice, is from Nagpur. I have not met him, but see if you are interested. And she got interested. The moment she came back, she produced all my plays there. That's how it started. But even then, I thought, well, it's fun, For me, it wasn't a really very serious kind of activity. Things came naturally to me. I wrote naturally, and they worked, and they proved their stageability. But there were many things I hadn't learned or known about theater, which I gradually began to learn later on in the company of Vijay. That's how I started. Sheer accident.
What was it like working with somebody who directs and produces your plays? So you worked with Vijay Mehta, I think, for a very long time. And then there was Satyadev Dubey has done your plays.
Right from Alkazi, yeah.
Alkazi has worked on your plays. So what was that like for you to watch your plays come to life on the stage?
It's quite thrilling to see your work being produced by somebody, and I always had wonderful directors and wonderful actors, and sometimes the results were really astonishingly beautiful. But then I never thought that it is my play. When I write a play, I visualize it totally differently. I look at my characters differently, they move differently, the spaces I have created. Because, I mean, this is how I learned. I decided that if I have to do it well, I have to learn the craft to begin with. So I used to draw a map of the stage, 30 by 40 something. And I used to put my characters there. Like I used to have colored buttons. Party was written like that. Green was Mohini, yellow was Divakar, pink was somebody like that. And I used to move and I started creating compositions. And I used to write scenes like that. I would move those buttons from here to here. And I didn't know, I wasn't aware at that time that I was learning the craft. I was learning how to use space, but I was doing it subconsciously. Now, I visualize this in a particular manner, the spaces, not only the physical spaces, but the spaces, acoustic spaces also. I used to create pauses, which was more for myself, I think. I expected my directors to obey my text. They never do, by the way. So when I saw my plays, and sometimes the results were much better than what I had visualized, like Vada Chiribandi, when Vijaya's production came, I said, this is much better than what I had envisaged. But they create their own spaces, they create their own acoustic spaces, physical spaces, and that changes the entire texture of the play. Not only the director, the actors bring their own things, Vijay was telling me sometimes, Mahesh, I am so desperate. I am telling this Nina girl to do this particular thing, and she just wouldn't take a pause. She just wouldn't take a pause. And Nina said, I am trying to, but I don't think I can take a pause like that. So she brings her own interpretation. The director has his own interpretations. Then there is stagecraft, and there is sets, and there are lights. All these people, it's a collective effort. So what they create is often quite remote from what you had thought. Sometimes it is much better also, but it is not your play. That is why I realized that it's a collective art and I have to respect my director, my actors, and personally I think it is the actor who is the most important person in theater, not the writer. In fact, I am clever enough. If I am clever enough, I should write a text where the actor cannot deviate from the text, For that, you have to be extremely careful. Otherwise, if you go on writing, what our actors do is illustrate words. It's so cold today. The actor comes and it's so cold today. Why are you saying this? You are wearing an overcoat and there is a angiti going. Why are you? But our actors illustrate everything. But it's not their fault. It is my fault. Why did I write that line? Why did my character say it is so cold? I have given a footnote. I have given a stage direction that he comes with an overcoat. Obviously, it is very cold outside. The actor knows what to do. But then he's so cold. I wrote that line. The actor, what can he do? He doesn't say that I will not say this line. So it is the responsibility of the playwright to create such an airtight text that the director and the actors cannot deviate from the text. That is why I have to create many spaces which they have to decipher. Again, they may decipher them according to their lights, according to their understanding of the character, according to their understanding of life, literature, so many things. And it would be totally different from what you intended. Doesn't matter, but that is the magic of theater, you know. A particular group, a particular actor does this particular role, he interprets it differently, uses those pauses differently, interprets them differently. Another actor comes and he does something totally different. That is why theater is so alive, you know.
Somebody has spoken about your use of pauses.
Pauses, yes.
And that is the late, great Girish Karnad, who has a connection to the South and to Chennai as a member of the Madras Players long ago. But Karnad, who has translated your plays into Kannada and directed them, has written, what sets Mahesh apart among Indian playwrights is his command of the broken phrase, the sentence half uttered, the casual pause. In his hands, these silences can be lethal and communicate a menace that would be scattered in a collection of fully expressive sentences. Every time I've taken on a text of his, I have enjoyed the crispness of sentences often left cliff-hanging, the deliberate avoidance of a direct reply, and the poignancy created by any direct verbal contact. His plays are resonant with the dhwani of the words he has chosen to use or throw away. How do you do this? How do you achieve these pauses, silence, the experience of the unsaid in your writing?
Well, Girish has translated about six of my plays in Kannada, and that is the greatest award I ever got in my life, you know. I was overwhelmed when he said that he wanted to. And his only regret was he couldn't translate Vada Chiribandi, which was already translated. Anyway. And now I will tell you something, something which should amuse you and interest you, how I discovered pauses. In the initial phase of my writing, I was writing one act, I don't remember which one. And I got stuck after 10 or 12 pages. And I stuck and said, what is the next line? I don't know what is the next line, you know. What do we do next? So I just said pause. And left it in my drawer. After about 2 or 3 days, I came back and I looked at the pause. So what do I do now? I'll write something. The first line which preceded the pause was maybe it is raining so hard. Then I wrote pause. After 4 days, I came back to the text and I said, what line should I write now? The roses bloom in December, you know. Now, these two lines are totally non-sequential. There is no sequence, but they are punctuated by this pause. And when I looked at it, I said, my God, I may mean nothing, but an actor would spend sleepless nights trying to find out what the pause means. And he will fill it out. And it will definitely lend a lot of meaning to these words, you know. This was a discovery, accidental discovery. That is when I realized that, yes, this is a great weapon. This is something I have to use very consciously, discreetly, and with great responsibility. So when you are writing, you know that I don't want to overstate something. I mean, I started writing non-sequential dialogue very late. In Sonata, it's totally non-sequential, like this. You know, it's raining very hard and roses are in December, like that. But ultimately, all those non-sequential sentences come together somewhere at a point and they make a lot of sense, you know. Because the idea is not to convey information. The idea is not to convey any knowledge. The idea is to convey an experience, you know. So that is where it helped me. After that particular moment, I realized, yeah, this is a wonderful discovery, but then I have to be very responsible while using pauses, and I have to, this is a part of the craft. In fact, it is craft, mostly. Sometimes it happens that pauses do get automatically created. It does happen. Sometimes you have not created any pauses, but a director may create a pause, or the actor may create a pause. In fact, suppose Amol Palekar is acting, there are only pauses and hardly any words. You know, because he's like that. You know, before he says a word, he says like that. You know. This is fun, but of course. So that is one aspect of theatre which all of the people, the actors, the director, and the actor have to be extremely careful of. That is the greatest weapon, because in theatre it is better to keep things unsaid than say everything. Let people decide, let people find out, let people imagine. They are not stupid people. My audience is a very sophisticated audience. Even in a village, why do we think that they are not sophisticated? They are sophisticated in a particular way. And allow them the freedom to interpret your text or interpret your play according to their understanding. Why do I have to explain things to them? Just give them a clue here and there. I learned it very gradually, of course, but now I think it works beautifully. It works beautifully. And that is when I realized that in theatre, writing is not important, editing is important. Now, editing happens automatically, but even now, once I write my first draft, I keep it aside, sleep over it. Then I come back to it after a month or so and take a red pencil and find out what can be deleted. And one realizes that one can delete many sentences, many words. Like, I will give you an instance. Would you like some tea? And she says, she says, of course, in our house it's always she, would you like some tea? So she says, of course, I would like a cup of tea. And how much sugar? When I look at this, is it necessary to use all these words? Perhaps it is an old couple, it's an old married couple. She would say tea. And he would say, sugar. Eliminate all those words, delete those words. We don't need them. Whatever is unnecessary is unbeautiful in theatre. I write very good Marathi, and there was a period a phase in my life when I reveled in writing beautiful poetic sentences, but they destroyed my plays because they were completely unwarranted. Vijay was to say, Mahesh, delete it. If you are not going to delete, I am going to delete it. It's a beautiful sentence, but do you want pop clapping or do you want to convey something? Don't fall in love with your language. That is the first trap a playwright can get in. This is a hard discipline. It's a very demanding discipline. And I learned it the hard way. But then I had a great mentor in Vijay. Yes.
You spoke a lot about non-consequential, but you wrote a trilogy of plays.
Yes.
And starting with Vada Chirebandi, and then there's The Pond, and then Yugant Apocalypse, sometimes it's translated as that. What made you do that? So I think they were written over a span of 12 years?
10 years, 12 years, yeah.
12 years? Yeah. So what made you go back to the same family, and what made you revisit those characters and write 3 plays over and it's about 6 and then 6, something like that, right?
I don't know if you are familiar with the trilogy, but it is a story about a feudal family living in a small village. Once they were great landholders, now going to seed. And there are internal squabbles. In the second play, the second part of the play, the younger person starts earning money by unfair means and they become rich again, but it is bad wealth. In the third play, which happens sometime in future, that is the first thing I have said in the beginning of the play. It's not happening today, but it's going to happen after 100 years maybe. This play happens sometime in future, that is what I have said. And the play is about complete devastation. No rains, no trees, no birds, a completely destroyed village full of dust, people dying behind the closed doors and nobody helping anybody. That is the scene. Because I firmly believe that is where we are headed towards. I wrote this particular play, the first part, because it is very much a personal kind of experience. I am a village boy, I am not a city boy. I came to Nagpur when I was 17, and for me Nagpur was as beautiful as Paris, although I had not seen either Paris or Nagpur. I had not traveled by a train by that time. So my roots are in village. Even now we have our old mansion, some land also. I go back. And ours was a family which was saved destruction or devastation because my father was a very wise man. He was a learned man. He had done his law graduation from Allahabad University, and he didn't do anything in his life except reading, and he had no vices, although as a Zamindar. But he packed us off to cities for education, and he said that Land Ceiling Act has come in 1949, and we are going to be poor because I am handing all the lands to the tenants now. I believe in this. He was a Gandhian also. He used to wear homespun khadi, although he used to have gold buttons to his shirt. You know, these are the contradictions of many Gandhians. So he packed us off to cities. We all did our college education. We have good jobs, and even my sisters. And my mother was an educated person, according to those standards. She was a great reader also. So we could manage. We survived. We survived quite well. But I was surrounded by many families, Deshpandes and Kulkarnis. I saw them going to seed, in front of my eyes in 30 years. I saw them going to complete devastation because they refused to do anything. They refused to educate themselves or their children. They didn't go to their farms or they didn't till their lands. Everything was dependent on servants. If they did the farming all right, and they borrowed money and they sold their land. Whenever there was a wedding, they'll sell a piece of land like that. Completely impoverished in 30 years. I have seen it happening. Then came the second phase. In my village, people who were completely, we call them riffraff, we would call them riffraff. They have become very rich now. They have distilleries and they have trucks and they have many, many city occupations and professions. They rule the roost there. So in the second act, this Parag, he decides to join this bandwagon and he becomes rich with vengeance. The third act, the third scene, although I'm not really very happy with the second, certain parts are very good, but certain parts I think are overwritten. If I'm asked to edit it, I can edit it now. The third part is a very controversial one. Many people didn't like it at all. They rejected it because people come and only talk. Nothing happens. There are three characters, they come and there are three monologues. My contention is what is wrong with monologues. Listen to the monologues, for goodness sake. Theatre is not only this, Theatre is words also, sometimes very important words. People go to listen to Shakespeare, not to watch theatre, People went to listen to Gielgud, John Gielgud, because Shakespeare was spoken so well by him. Do we expect to be or not to be with a lot of physical activity? It's a very still moment, But we have lost it in the last 40 years, We have been told that word is redundant in theatre, Only physical activity and physical theatre. So people do a lot of acrobatics. Sometimes they are justifiable, sometimes they are very good also. But not always. Sometimes word also is important. I recently saw Satyajit Ray interview and he said, what is wrong with words? If they are beautiful, please listen to them. And I felt so reassured. I said, well, the master is saying it. So I was trying to reinstate word in theatre. How long can we deny the strength of theatre? Sometimes there are certain things which have to be articulated, said. Gauri is mathematician. I loved it because it's so beautifully written. Every single movement. I find it a very still play. It's a very still play, and this kind of stillness comes only after total devastation. This kind of stillness that comes only after a great storm has completely ravaged the land. It is that kind of play. Yuganta aspired to do that. How far I am successful or not is irrelevant. Because that never mattered to me. Being successful was never on the agenda. But this is what I tried.
you've spoken about Rangayan and very movingly recently to some of us about what it was like in the heyday of this theatre group called Rangayan, which Vijay Mehta and Vijay Tendulkar and Arvind Deshpande they founded. And you told us some things that I think this audience would love to hear about the interplay of forms and interplay of artistic
Yes.
choices.
And this is something I would love to tell you, because maybe things like that can happen to Chennai, because I have been here for the last 7 weeks and I see a tremendous amount of continuity of culture here, which is unbroken. There are many traditions which are unbroken. One feels is palpable in the atmosphere. And not that I know a lot of people here. But during the Rangan was established in 1960 something. At that time, there was a building called Akash Ganga on Warden Road in Nagpur. It was a 5-storied building which belonged to some Gujarati businessman, and he donated it to artists, 5 floors. One floor was for theatre people, another floor for musicians, another floor for painters, like that. Ravi Shankar, Ali Akbar Khan, Annapurna, they all used to come and rehearse there. Jitendra Abhisheki, Kishori, they used to be on one floor, rehearsing in their respective rooms. It was a very large building. There were about 15, 20 rooms on every floor. They would come rehearse there. On one floor, Alkazi with his group, Vijaya with her group, they would rehearse. There was another floor where Gayatri would come, Raza would come and paint, then Tayyab Mehta, Akbar Padamsi. They were all young people at that time, in the 60s. They were in their 20s, late 20s, 30s maybe. And they had a great camaraderie. They would used to visit each other, Vijaya rehearsing and Ravi Shankar dropping in, or Ravi Shankar doing his riyaz and Alkazi dropping in. It was a continuous exchange. And in the evening, they would sit out on the lawn. I said, I can't believe this. I can't believe that something like that ever happened. And why can't it happen now? Rangayan was a product of that. And you will be surprised that when Rangayan started, Tendulkar and Vijay were there. Tendulkar was in his late 20s, or Vijay was in her early 20s maybe. They started this group. And the idea was not to do many plays commercially, or not to do plays that would be liked by people. The idea was to learn what theatre means or what theatre is. So they sought out new writer, and Tendulkar was a new writer. Tendulkar would write something and Vijaya would rehearse it with Sulabha and Arvind and Dr. Lagu. And they had a membership of about 500 people. And those 500 people were all great writers, like Jitendra Abhisheki and Kishori, and all these were members of Ranga, and they would come and watch the play. The cream of the Bombay intellectuals, they were the members. They had to pay 100 rupees per year. And they would, Rangayan would give 4 plays every year. They would come watch. After 5 shows, they would stop doing that play. People used to say, everybody likes the play, why don't you do more plays? So Vijaya and Bhagwat used to say, we have learned a lot from this text, but we have explored all the possibilities. So let us approach some new text. The idea is not to sell your product. The idea is not to make your product popular. The idea is not to make people aware of what you are doing. The idea is to learn yourself and groom yourself. It was a lab. The plays were never advertised. They were often done in the Wilson College Hall. They used to put a small placard outside near the gate. That was enough advertisement. They never invited press. Ever. If the press wanted to come, they had to come and buy tickets, 2 rupees per seat. I was groomed by this group. I was the last of them, I joined them later. I was the youngest. And that was a kind of atmosphere which I immensely fell in love with. I said, this is what I want. And who wants to make a career? Had I wanted to make a career, I would have migrated to Bombay and become Salim Javed or Gulzar. But a career means competition, envy, so many things. I didn't want that baggage. I was very happy in Nagpur. And Vijay was the just right person to groom me, and that has been my grooming. And gradually things began to change. Shantata court चालू है. I mean, Shantata court is in session. It became very popular, and a small group from Rangayan said that it is so popular. Let us do it commercially. We shall earn some money, and that money can be spent on another productions. But Tendulkar, Vijayabhai, and Bhagwat said, no, that is not our premise. We don't want to do this. No. That is where Rangayan was. It's splintered into two groups. But I belong to the Vijaya group till the end. That is how I was groomed. So I'm really surprised. I want to reach out to a lot of people. What for? What for? Then you have to write a very popular play which everybody would like. This we call these essays, but they are not essays in fact. We call them essays for want of a better word. There are a lot of things in there. We'll not talk about that at the moment. But theatre-wise, I was brought into, because we were not professional writers even. We were just experimenting, trying to find out, learn. We never thought that we were contributing something. Yeah, we listen to this word, his contribution, her contribution. What contribution? It was already there. You are borrowing it from that, It is a vast expanse. You are borrowing from art. You are not contributing anything to art. It was already there. We knew that. So there was no question of feeling that I'm contributing something. I'm not contributing, I'm learning.
Maybe it is a good time to talk about the Necropolis trilogy since you brought it up. Speaking of contributions, it's a literary feat for sure. I just want to, for those of you who haven't read anything, I just wanted to say a few things about it. It was originally published as Tribandh in Marathi. That's something that Sarabjit Kacha tells us in the introduction. And this word is a portmanteau word which brings together tri, which is three, and nibandh, which is essay. Part one unfolds these surreal encounters, some of which you have heard of already when Sarabjit read from the book. So there's a graveyard in Pakistan, and there's a series of encounters that happens. Part two flashes back to Parva, where you grew up. And part three moves from a glimpse of Melbourne, Australia, and then to the shores of the Ganga. And all these three parts, they amalgamate so many things: fantasy, memory, architecture, other aspects of place, literature, film, music, history, politics, village life, cityscapes. And theatre director Amal Alana, who's Alkazi's daughter and biographer, there are many more like us, I guess. She writes in the foreword of the trilogy that it's got this strange epic sweep. And this protagonist narrator, that's what I will call the I in the three essays, if you will, encounters all kinds of characters. A singer-actor Noor Jahan, to Achilles, Emily Dickinson, Lata Mangeshkar, Marceau from Camus' The Stranger, characters from Greek and Indian mythology, many other stars of the screen, and real people, so-called real people, such as caregiver Bhiva, Mandakini, your friend, other friends, siblings, teachers, parents, uncles. The canvas is, it's dazzling. And these childhood crushes and idols sort of pop in and out of the frame. And there are multilingual quotations from all manner of languages threaded throughout the book. And partition looms large, but not in a very direct way. And it feels like this exploration of a parallel universe in which conversations happen across space and time. They range from torridly sensual to aridly austere. So how do we characterize this creature you have spawned in terms of genre? Is it memoir? Is it autobiography? Is it short story, fantasy, interior monologue? Is it a Bildungsroman on drugs? I felt a similar confusion when I read J.M. Coetzee's Boyhood, Scenes from a Provincial Life. And though that was a less hallucinatory and less dizzying experience. How did you even come up with such a shaggy, baggy monster of a book?
If I mean, if you're bored, tell me, because it's going to take another 10 minutes at least. I was in Pakistan. Girish and I visited Pakistan as their state guests. So we went to Makli, which is a big necropolis. It's a huge place, 6 miles by 6 miles, full of tombs. Very small tombs like this, children, and palatial tombs, Huge, they look like palaces. And there is eerie silence, and it's a beautifully planned, streets crossing, and there was nobody except Girish, I, our guide, and Saraswati, Girish's wife. And we wandered around. And we came back. And in the night, I had very strange dreams, and I suddenly realized that there is my own necropolis within me. I have buried so many things, inside, some deliberately, some unconsciously. But a lot of things have gone into me, my psyche, without my knowledge, and sometimes they come up without any reason. And many times they are not even related to each other. Close your eyes and watch yourself, and you will see that 2-3 ideas, 2-3 memories come together, and they are absolutely not related to each other. This is one. That is what made me start writing this. But then I realized that it goes back to my training in theater also. I wrote this in this particular form because I had been familiar with the tyranny of time and space in theater. There is physical, they are both physical spaces, I mean, this particular space 40 by 30 and how I use it, and the acoustic space, how I use my dialogue, how it is punctuated by silences. And when I was writing Yuganta, it very strongly occurred to me that I am a failure, maybe it hardly matters, but many great artists, or almost are serious artists, and most of them are failures. They try to transcend the barriers of time and space and go beyond a territory which is indefinable, which is not governed by time and space. You may call it eternity, you may call it the absolute, call it whatever, not God. It's not a religion, it's a very secular feeling. According to me, eternity is a very secular thing. So most of, like, when you think of Emily Dickinson is constantly battling with this idea of eternity. So that has been my preoccupation for a very long time. And I realized that I am completely chained to these dimensions. I have never been able to free myself from the tyranny of time and space, and I cannot really go deep within myself unless and until I dechain myself. How do I do it? So when you think of eternity, nothing happens there. Eternity is many nows. It's now. There is no past, there is no future. It's now. So I said, how can I at least try to bring this nowness in my writing? So the only thing I could do was, since I could not unchain myself from time and space, I said, all right, I can bring them together. I can bring past, future, and present together, and I'll create my own space and time. So Emily Dickinson comes, Duryodhan comes. Not only that, sculptures, the Yakshi of Didarganj, she comes. And we meet on the beach of Melbourne, and we discuss Indian classical music or Carnatic music, and we are creating a nowness. That is my space, my personal space, my personal time, and it is now. I am talking to color red, I am talking to Emily Dickinson, I am talking to a sculpture, I am talking to Achilles, I am talking to my girlfriend Mandakini. At the same time, we are together, and it is happening so naturally, it's naturally. I am the king of that space. It is my now. It is my nowness. If you are interested in sharing it with me, maybe. So that is what happened. When I started writing, there are memories, some characters that really existed in my life. but some characters from mythology, from literature, some things from my dreams, from my imagination. So dreams, imagination, reality, supra-reality, all these things come together, not because I'm interested in telling you certain events from my life or about certain people from my life. I want to convey you a particular experience. Ultimately, Mandakini and Emily Dickinson and Didar Yakshi, they are incidental. All of we come together so that we convey you a particular experience which is indefinable. This has been the attempt. Whether I am successful or not is again irrelevant. For me, it is irrelevant. That is how I started, and I enjoy doing it because, I am living in nowness, although I have not transcended these barriers.
One character who is very beautifully etched, and I must also laud Sarabjit for the fantastic translation. It's got a poet's touch, and I can imagine how difficult it would have been to translate this book into English, which is quite unforgiving. But the character I fell in love with is Bhiva. Could you talk a little bit about He's not a fancy character. He's not.
I become very emotional when Bhiva was a family retainer. And it was Bhiva who brought me up, my parents were busy with their own lives. My mother was in the kitchen or looking after a huge house, about 20 people. She had no time. My father had no time. He was in his study reading all the time. It was Bhiva, the family retainer, who really brought me up, and his values were probably much better than the values of my parents. And the kind of unconditional love he gave me, was unforgettable. Even now, if somebody asks me to point out three major individuals from my life, it is not going to be Alkaji or Vijaya. It's going to be Bhiva. He means a lot more to even Rashtrapati giving me an award. I mean, these are routines that happen. But what Bhiva has given me, a solid, beautiful, healthy childhood, And I have also realized that it is the ordinary people, the ordinariness of life, There is great beauty about ordinary people and ordinariness of life. Great literature is not about heroes and great events, Great literature is about grapes of wrath, ordinary people. It is these people who build cultures, That is why Bhiva is important or Mandakini is important, I am very lucky to have Sarab as my translator. He is a Nasik boy. He is a Sardar. But he lived in Nasik, so he speaks and writes Marathi. Because a couple of people tried the translation and we were not happy. But when Sarab said, "Oh, I would like to do it," so I said, "Go ahead and do it." And he has done an excellent job. He came over to Nagpur after the first draft. We sat together and spruced it up. But I'm very happy and I'm very lucky to have him as a translator. So I have been after him to translate other races of mine.
The other character I fell in love with in the Necropolis trilogy is music, and the way you have threaded music, references to music, musicians, and you've done something which we teach in college classrooms as ekphrasis, but kind of a musical ekphrasis. So ekphrasis is when it's like Keats's Ode on a Grecian Urn, when a poem describes a sculpture. Or Tom Gunn has a poem about the Caravaggio's conversion of Saul, if you remember that. And so, so we have lots of examples of this, but I see in this book music, sort of the attempt in word to bring out the experience of music, the sort of the feelings that a listener goes through, the dhwani of that music, tracing the erratic twists and turns in the listener's mind and heart as you listen to a song. That's how I felt. And especially in the end of the part 2, when there's a feeling of leaving the village. Didi, who is Lata Mangeshkar, who's also a character, by the way, in the essays, has conversations in the nowness with the writer. She talks so movingly about listening to Kesar Bai, Kumar Gandhar, so on and so forth. And I just wanted to ask you what role music has played in your writing, and how, why there's so much music in this book.
Because there was only music in my family, books and music, nothing else. Although we were very wealthy people, there was not much furniture, no objedas, nothing like that. Books and music, nothing else. And my father had an impeccable taste. And listening to not Vidh Bharati at that time, Radio Ceylon was absolutely blasphemous, We had to listen to Kesar Bai or Bade Ghulam Ali Khan or Fayaz Khan Sahab, Even listening to Natya Sangeet was considered immature taste. Listening to Thumri or Dadra was frivolous, Only Pakka Gana. And I was told that the day I was born, on the Navami, before Dashera, there was concert going on. I was born at 7:10 in the evening. There was a concert going on in the upper hall. We were zamindar, so there was music all the time. So I grew up with music. There was music. My elder brother was a trained vocalist. My elder sister was a trained vocalist. She died very young, unfortunately. But my brother sang, but he never gave public performance. Again, a zamindar, you don't perform in publicly, that kind of a thing. So music, I cannot imagine a single breath in my life without music. And now I don't mind telling you, because I know you are not going to ask me to sing, but I took training for 5 years in classical music. My elder brother gave me my first lessons, and then I went to my maternal uncle, who was a professor of music in Nagpur, Morris College. So I know music, I think, pretty well. It's a part of my entire being. I can't imagine this life without music.
But why introduce music into your writing and the experience of music? It feels very special to me, the way music weaves into this particular set of essays.
I know it comes very naturally to me. I mean, every moment is charged with music. I mean, it comes very naturally. I think of many ideas in terms of musical phrases, Gauri would understand it. You would understand it. You have this great lineage,
I have one last question. Is that okay? And I think we haven't talked about Party, the play. And some scholars and critics, I was snooping around the web, they say that Party is a commentary on the role of art and artists in the world. So now in 2024, what do you think is the role of art and artists in the world?
No, I mean, Party was written in 1974. And that was a time when he had to be a committed artist, otherwise you were no artist, You had to talk about exploited and the downtrodden and the burning problems and the inequality. And I was young and I said, well, I have to do something like this, because I was considered a very regressive writer, because I was writing about the aches and pains of personal individuals, So I was completely written off. What kind of a writer are you? There are so many burning problems around. So all right, I decided to write something about burning problems. But because I am a smart playwright, I created some good characters. But I'm not really happy with that, I'm not really very happy with that, because it becomes didactic. I was very young at that time, and I was unnecessarily judgmental also. When Tendulkar was very angry, Girish also was very angry. So that is what you think of us. I said, that is what I think of myself. Girish, I think I'm a fraud. Having written this play, I have proved it, Why did I write this play? This particular class, the creme de la creme, the literati, je kuch hai, they have their own lives, maybe vacuous, yes, but I should have more compassion, more understanding, empathy about their lives also. There is no life which doesn't deserve empathy. I didn't have that kind of understanding at that time. I was too young.
Questions.
Thank you very much. You have been very patient.
Can we take some questions from
Questions from the audience.
Okay.
Questions.
Yes, I was about to say that we have been overwhelmed.
It's a
So
statement.
we are not able to say anything really.
One
Are you
thing-
writing
sorry.
something even now, sir?
Are you writing something even now?
At the moment, nothing. I am not a very prolific writer. I take long gaps, 3 years, 4 years. I mean, these three essays were written over a period of 10 years. In fact, after Vada Chirivandi, I didn't write for 8 years because there was no compulsion. I was not in any competition or I didn't want to contribute. There was nothing like that. So I wrote when I felt like.
I wish we all had this ability to step out of our skins and laugh at ourselves the way you do.
What did she say?
I wish we all had this ability to step out of our skins and laugh at ourselves the way you do.
I don't know. Because maybe I don't take myself so seriously. Because listen up, in our society, artists are unnecessarily pedestalized. I am writing. So what? You feel like writing, so you are writing, There are carpenters doing their work, doctors doing their work, lawyers doing their work. You are writer, so you are writing. I mean, what is so special about being a writer or a dancer or a musician? But you want to have a cake and eat it too. That's not fair.
We don't have cake. We don't have money for cake.
No, I don't have any money.
Doctors and lawyers have money.
We have to stop pedestalizing, right? Artists.
I noticed one thing. Do you mind the mic or shall I remove it?
No, I can repeat it.
No, repeat it.
You're talking about very emotional things where you are personally, affected emotionally. Almost simultaneously, you're able to laugh. And you make your audience cry and laugh at the same time. Did you ever realize that this is what you do with your writing?
No.
With your writing. He's saying you do that in your writing. So did you realize?
No, I don't realize it,
Even today, there were at least 2 or 3 occasions when you are talking about something that affected you deeply emotionally, and within a second you're making a joke of it. And it's an incredible capacity, I think.
What is it?
He said that within a second you make a joke of something that you're deeply affected by, and that's an incredible capacity, right? Yeah.
That way I think I'm a very Marathi person. Marathis have this trait of looking at things rather obliquely, We do, and we don't take them on their face value somehow. We are rather cynical also. Death is lampooned in Marathi literature, and North Indians are shocked. How can you talk about death like this? That is how we should talk about death, What is so special about death? Like Satish Alekar has written a great play called Mahanirvan, and death is, yes. How do I describe that play? It's a parody of death, and it's such a marvelous play. And North Indians are simply shocked. You're talking about death like this? Very well, that is the Marathi mentality. We don't take it seriously. It's a reality.
Have you ever looked at the Marathis in Akhila? Have you ever looked at the Marathis in Tanjavur?
Marathi Bhoslas.
Yeah, not just them, but all the many other Deshastha Brahmins and others who migrated.
Yeah.
Have you looked at their lives at all at any of your work?
No, I am not familiar with their lives. I am a Deshastha Brahmin myself, and in fact, I am not a Maharashtrian. I am a Telugu originally. Mine is the 9th generation in Maharashtra. My mother and grandmothers were Deshpandits, so I am completely Maharashtrianized. But my great-grandfather and my great-grandmother spoke Telugu. This family migrated from Telangana to Vidarbha region about 150 years ago. So we are completely Maharashtrianized. So my roots are in Telangana. Our Kuladevatam is in Rajarajeshwara, Vemulmada in Telangana. So at that time, migration was a very natural thing, and we got integrated very easily, So I know nothing about this. I have heard of them, and I also hear a lot about their contribution to particularly literature and music. And Gauri was telling me that they still speak antiquated Marathi, you know. Remarkable.
Oh, sorry.
There's one question there.
माझा एक क्वेश्चन आहे कॉन्ट्रोवर्शियल नाही आहे पण ज्या प्रकारे the way religion aspect that nowadays putting into the creative side in films, what is your take on it? For example, say like you mentioned about Javed and Salim sir, I saw a movie like a Coolie. In Coolie, when the like Amitabh Bachchan's mom is giving a prasad to Amitabh Bachchan and he's like, no, I'm not religious, I don't want a prasad. But at the same time, in the end of the movie, when he's wearing a 786 badge and he's taking a shot on his on himself and he's still alive. So why do you think like creative field is taking such things and making it a controversial? And I think that is happening. I think recent film about Hanuman where Saif Ali Khan was there, like the way they portrayed Hanuman like without a beard. So I think this is small things which is coming and making it controversial. So you being as a writer and your things are taking it forward for a direction and all these things, what is your take on it? Like, is it necessary or it's happening something purposeful?
Let me apologize first. I'm completely deaf in my left ear, so I didn't really catch every word, but Akhila would translate things for you.
He's talking about writers making religious controversy in film.
Religious controversy.
Yeah. So portraying a Hanuman without a beard, things like that. He's asking about,
I have no connection with that world at all. I mean, I haven't seen a Hindi movie in the last 30 years, I guess. I didn't see my own films, Party and Holi. I didn't see them. I was not invited also. Because once you hand over your text to the director, you are a poor relative. You're just unwanted. So I am not aware of these kind of films at all. I don't know who these actors are even. I know Amitabh Bachchan's name, but sorry. I saw only one film where he was wearing a ghagra and dancing, and I said, thank you very much. That is not my cup of tea, sorry.
Do you have an opinion on Western playwrights? Who do you think is the best?
Western playwrights?
Yeah, who do you think is the best? Do you have opinions on Western
There are
playwrights?
quite a few, I mean. Rather than playwrights, I would say plays, Like O'Neill, according to me, is a wonderful, but O'Neill is a very bad craftsman. He's not a very organized thinker. He's not a very profound person, but his entire work throbs with dark, black passion, That is what holds his plays together. I think he is the greatest. Although craft-wise, he is very inferior to Tennessee Williams or Miller. But I like Glass Menagerie, or I like Albi's Zoo Story, or Virginia Woolf, or in the Harold Pinter is my favorite. I don't know the younger playwrights now, but I have been reading them avidly, and I have learned a lot from them, particularly the craft part, If you really want to know what craft is, how it goes into writing a text, you have to read the Western text, the English text. Like Terence Rattigan was a second-rate writer, but read any of his plays and you realize how much craft has gone into it. It's a perfectly chiseled play. They spend months on a text, What happens with us if we write a text and according to us, well, this is next to Shakespeare's Hamlet, and hand it over to the director and he butchers it. We don't take it seriously. I take a lot of time. I don't. But Western playwrights are really something. I think we have to learn a lot from them. The craft.
What was the name of the Tendulkar play that changed you around?
What was the name of the Tendulkar play that made you riveted?
Shantata Courts Always. No, not that.
No,
It
the
was
first one.
that was called Mi Jinklo Miharlo. It is not his best play. It is, in fact, not even talked about these days. But the production was absolutely mesmerizing. And Vijaya and Dr. Lagu together, it was like two volcanoes coming together. I couldn't move my eyes, I couldn't take my eyes off them. Amazing actors they were. Amazing. I've never seen acting like that after that. Never.
So, sir, what is the reason that you feel that you are not able to see similar kind of performers to this date?
Why do you feel that you are not able to see similar types of performers today, to this date?
To this date,
Yeah.
on the stage.
Listen, again, I'm not comparing or I'm not being judgmental also, but I have known these people. They were not only my mentors, they were very close friends. We spent about 40, 50 years together. They used to come and stay with me. I used to go and stay with them. We have known each other so well. And they were a really evolved human beings. They were great readers. They understood music. They understood painting. They understood politics. They had definite ideas about religion, about secularism. I mean, they could mesmerize you if they started talking, even Vijaya, I mean, their exposure, like I told you, that Akash Ganga building, where all these artists used to come together, there was a tremendous amount of exchange. They had enriched them, no end. And when I met Alkazi, I said, well, I would like to be like him. He was a complete Renaissance man. There was nothing he did not know. Now, when I meet youngsters, like they read these plays and Mahesh Dada, these are good, but there are too many references. So I said, what's wrong? When I was a student, and if I wanted to find out what are references about, I had to go to the university library with my card, where the attendants will be rude to me. They would not give that book to me. I had to wait for another 8 days. Then I will get that book. It used to take 15 days to find out one reference. Now you have a laptop. Just click your mouse and you get. You don't even want to do that. They have no grooming in music. They do not know what the good painters are. I mean, I talk to most of them. They come and stay with me in Nagpur. We have this small workshop. I said, do you know Raza's work, or do you know Gaitonde's work? Do you know Kishori's? No. Because there is no time. They start their day at 6 in the morning, catch a local, rush to the television studios, try to find a job. They are trained actors from NSD, but because they do not get a job there as an actor, they write texts or they become makeup men or something like that. Where is the time to read? Not even basic reading is done. So, it is a matter of self-grooming. You have to decide that you have to groom yourself if you want to be of some caliber. There is so much to learn. But I have yet to come across an actor in Marathi who is absolutely well read and who understands music and who understands painting. None. And this is a scene everywhere.
Before you end, I just wanted you to once again tell the story of your Pakistan visit.
Pakistan? Why is she interested in this? Okay, we shall end up on a very funny but very real experience of mine. You will love it. Girish and I were invited by the Pakistan government back in 2007. It was a invitation from their Department of Culture. And like consulates treat you, and we got our visas 2 hours before we had to catch the flight. They kept us waiting. We were on needles. We were in a hotel in Delhi for 3 days waiting for the visas to come. They didn't come. So I said, Girish, let's go back. Visas are not coming. They finally came. Then we went to Pakistan. It was a lavish reception. The Minister of Culture and the Secretary and Undersecretary and 5 limousines and commandos and this. I was never treated like that in my life, either before or after that, So I said, Girish, what's this happening? He said, oh, yeah, state gets smashed. Islamabad, we were given visas for only 3 cities: Islamabad, Lahore, they call it Lahore, and Karachi. And again, in those cities, we could not go to cantonments, We were not allowed to go to cantonments. So we went to Islamabad, and every evening there would be party, this embassy, that embassy, this endless parties every day, and we were being petted and met all the major writers and artists, and we met Salima Apal. Salima Apa means Salima is the daughter of Faiz Sahib, the greatest poets of this century. So in an Islamabad party, Salima Apa said, Mahesh, you are coming to Lahore, हमारे घर दावत के लिए आ जाएंगे आप? तो मैंने कहा बिल्कुल आ जाएंगे. So if there is some problem, just call me. He says, what problem? We are state guests. I say, you are in Pakistan, Mahesh. All right. So after Islamabad, we came to Lahore. Another 3 days of partying and rubbing shoulders with all the fashionable and glitterati of Lahore. After those 8 days, another 7 days were taken over by the Oxford University Press, and the government of Pakistan sort of withdrew. So we had a very quiet morning. So I was looking at the visa, and suddenly I realized that Girish, the visa says that every time we enter a city, we have to go to the police station and report. And while leaving the city, we have to go back again and report that you are leaving. We have not done in Islamabad, we have not done it in Lahore. So Girish says, are you mad? We are state guests. Do you expect all these people, all the Minister of Culture coming with us to the police station and we reporting? What nonsense. I said, this is what the visa says. So Tony Anthony of OUP, he came and I said, Anthony, there is a problem. Visa says this. He said, you have not reported? He said, no. Not in Islamabad? No. Lahore? No. 5 years. I said, what 5 years? He said, 5 years. It's a punishable offense. It's a criminal offense. And maybe because you are writers and known writers, you will be treated as spies of the government of India. I am going to the police station. It was Ramadan, and the police stations were closed they closed at 1 o'clock. It was already 12 o'clock. He rushed there, and the police are like our police, oh, we don't know nothing about it. Bhej do unko yahan pe. That kind of a thing. He came back, said, I don't know what to do. We are in a fix. There is no way out. Said, Girish, let us talk to Salima Apa. She is a cultural dharina, even now. Because she said that if you have a problem, call me. So you talk to her. I said, I am not going to talk to her because you are responsible. So you are responsible. Saraswati was watching us, very happily because she had an American passport. She was not in trouble. So Girish rang her, Salima Apa, and said, Salima Apa, this is what we have done, and my God, I don't know what's going to happen. So Salima Apa, so what? It's only a matter of 5 years, Girish, Mere Walid, my father, he was in Jia's regime in prison for 11 years, and he wrote wonderful poetry. And you are two very good playwrights, and anyway, Pakistan doesn't have playwrights. So write wonderful plays, All that I can do is find the best prison in our country. So, we were getting nervous by minute. Finally, she said, all right, I'll look after both. And within 10 minutes, everything was arranged. The police came and stamped her, all that. But that half an hour, And I still don't know, had Salima Apa been not there, hum kya karte, what would we have done? And you feel it is a police state. You feel police everywhere. Like we were not allowed to go out of the city. A Pakistani dost hamare, very secular, bright people, Mahesh, Hadappa dekhne jayenge. Like, Are, we cannot go. Ek jaisa to dikhte hai, we look all alike here. Nobody is going to. Then he took us to Hadappa. 4 hours drive from Lahore. We came back. Jeep was following us all the time for 2 hours. And we said, my God, we have had it. Finally, it wasn't like that. We came back, and when we came back to our guest house, We saw 8 commandos with 2 jeeps, with AK-57, all standing like this. I said, my God, Girish, they know. Shut up. We just very gradually got into and went to our rooms. After an hour or so, we looked out and they had disappeared. So we went down and we had a Khansama Akbar. I said, Akbar, who are these people? Why were they? No, bajo mein, there was some drag racket, they had come for that. I said, oh my God. And even then, we did go to Makli, which, we were not allowed to go to Makli. It's far away from Karachi. While on our way back, our cars were stopped. They were sniffing dogs. And my God, if they ask me my name, I can't lie. What do? I was in one car, Girish was in another car. Girish ka car to chala gaya, and then they just wouldn't stop. The dog wouldn't stop sniffing my car, and I was sitting like this. And since I'm not a really religious person, I didn't pray, but I said, all right, Mahesh, whatever happens, happens. Finally, without asking me a single question, they allowed me to go. But those are very difficult moments in Pakistan, very difficult. And we were foolhardy. Finally, we justified, when are we going to be here again? We had to do it. I said, it's nonsense. We shouldn't do it because the entire government of India would have been in trouble. That is how it's very funny now. It's a good, funny story, but not at that moment.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your patience, and I really enjoyed being with you.
Thank you so much for being here, and special thanks to our guests today, Mahesh ji and Akhila ji and Kacha Saab. It was really a masterclass. I think a masterclass in how plays are conceived, written, and delivered, and the kind of self-depreciating manner in which Mahesh ji presented the whole thing. I think we learned a lot, and we are taking away a lot from you, sir. Thanks for coming to our stage, and I hope by the next time you're here, we'll be in our own premises.
Thank you so much. I would like to sell myself. I used to conduct workshops. They are very long workshops, 11-day or 15-day workshops, intensive workshops. I don't do that anymore, but I would have loved to do a workshop here because it's a very vibrant city. Yeah, I have seen Bala's work. I have seen Puri's work.
I'm sure all of us would really like it to be more vibrant, and there are lack of spaces, I think, where people can rehearse and really, put out quality plays. And I think CIC would fill in that gap in the days to come when we have our own premises. So thank you very much for being with us today, sir.
My pleasure.
We hope to see you more often. Thank you, Akhila, for conducting the entire proceeding, and thank you for that reading. So next week,
Story of Madras on 8th.
On the 8th, we meet here. This is a kind of a Madras Week event where we see a story of Madras. So I hope many of you will be here to see that too. And this is a special production by Intac, and we hope to have some real insights into the history of our beloved city. So see you then. This is on the 8th at the same venue. Thank you.